I've been called out. And you know what? I had it coming to me.
Okay.
Because I probably haven't brought the edge that I should have brought in terms of my takes.
Okay.
I've been a little bit milquetoast. I've been trying to drive the show and set you up, and maybe I've been straddling the beam. Maybe it's the seat. I don't want to blame Steiny, but I don't have a strong opinion. And I've been a little bit on the fence, Alan.
I don't have a strong opinion.
So who do you want me to rat-a-tat-tat first?
No. Look.
You called me out during the break, tough guy. Let's go.
No, look. Me and Mark, we were chatting at you. You know, no.
Grandy scolded me.
No Biggie Smalls, and Grandy wants you to let us know how you feel about the Jimmy G article situation sensation.
All right, I'll start with the Jimmy Garoppolo, and I see your calls on Shanahan, Trey Lance, and a possible trade. We're going to get to that, and also I'm going to play some Sam Darnold sound that's going to really piss Styles off. No, that's it. No more Mr. Nice Guy.
All right.
I'm reading this article from Michael Silver in the Chronicle. Excellent article. Make sure you subscribe to the SF Chronicle, one of the last great local papers. But I read this, and Jimmy Garoppolo, to me, comes across a little bit like a baby. Little soft. He didn't see it, and, he feels like, and I guess it's maybe the way Michael Silver's writing it, it came off to some as a brusque and callous send-off for a QB who started a Super Bowl for the Niners, reached another one, and then probably helped save their season. For me, this whole Garoppolo departure, how he was kind of shown the door, comes across to me as a little soft.
Okay.
I don't think that Jimmy G, and I get it, he doesn't have to do this article, and I appreciate Michael Silver for getting this exclusive one-on-one, but to me, Jimmy G comes across a little soft in this piece.
I don't think
Okay?
Jimmy. Yeah.
Is that good enough, Grandy? Or do you want me to use stronger language?
No.
I know you're eating, so you don't have to answer.
You're good there. I don't think Jimmy G comes across soft. I think it just speaks to how Jimmy G was maybe treated in the media. Maybe a bit, I don't know. I don't know if coddled is the right term, but it feels like the coddling is now happening because you miss someone more once they're gone. I don't know that Jimmy G was coddled when he was here. A lot of people had a lot of things to say about him and the overthrow and not winning the big one. But now that he's gone, I guess now it's a love fest. But I don't think Jimmy himself sounded soft in the article.
Well, this from Jimmy Garoppolo talking about 2021. And I am quoting from the Michael Silver piece in the Chronicle. Make sure you subscribe. And I think they got a deal right now, 99 cents or whatever. I don't even know. From Jimmy Garoppolo. Talking about 2021 when the Niners had clearly moved on. Jimmy Garoppolo, quote, "Yeah, the year before was real awkward." He was getting paid $25 million that year. "That was tougher than this past year, honestly. You're always going to be dealt a hard hand at some point, and you've just got to make the best of it. And that's what I've tried to do. That was a hard time, but I had some good people around me to lean on. The brothers in the locker room, those guys played a big role. I don't think the fans always saw that stuff, but those guys really picked me up when I was down sometimes." Jimmy Garoppolo, $25 million to hold a piece of leather and throw it to some of his best friends. There. You happy now, Grandy?
You're out on it.
I'm not totally out on it, but I feel a little bit like this comes across as just a little soft. It's football. And yes, they tried to replace you. And they drafted a guy to replace you. You still were one of the highest paid players in all of pro sports. And I know it's not only about the money, but, Jimmy, this feels to me a little bit overly sensitive for my tastes.
I hear you. And when you reread it like that, and obviously the way that you're reading it, sure.
I'm just reading words, Alan. I'm just reading words.
All right.
These are words that he said to Michael Silver that Michael Silver wrote into an article that was printed out by a producer and handed to me. I'm just reading words.
Yeah.
I didn't have any dramatic music behind it, which would have been kind of cool, Grandy, if you weren't having dinner. But maybe next time around we can do that, which really drives the point home.
Well, the timing is what I think is the biggest question mark because Jimmy played that season. Jimmy started, so how long was he sad for? It's not as if they still had Jimmy, because we're not talking about last season. We're talking about the season before where Jimmy started after they drafted Trey. Right. So, when you're down and you're on hard times and you're feeling down, Jimmy played that season. So when was he feeling down? That's my question.
He was feeling down after, and I'm just guessing because there's no actual timeline. He did describe 2022 as, quote, a wild year when he said, see ya. Mm-hmm. And then he actually didn't leave.
Right.
The see ya led to him being on the side field, and actually he stuck around. But he felt the previous campaign, 2021, was the one that was far less enjoyable. And you mentioned it. That was the year where he played 15 games. He went 9-6, and he had a pretty good year. Mm-hmm. He led the league in yards per completion at 12.7. He led the league in net yards per attempt at 7.7. So he had a pretty good year when he was on the field, but he was the one who called it, according to the Mike Silver piece, far less enjoyable.
And maybe it was. And I think that maybe for me, and I'm not saying, look, we've heard rumblings, right, about the not texting people back, and Jimmy laughs this stuff off. We've heard rumblings, and I don't know what the relationship is between Jimmy and Trey, but I would say this. When you say stuff like that, and obviously Jimmy didn't mean it like this, the brothers in the locker room kind of rallying around you, we could tell. We could tell. And I've thought for a long time, and I'm not necessarily going to name names, I've thought for a long time that the team in general did a poor job, veterans included, captains included. I think they have done, not all of them, but some of the more important pieces did a poor job of bringing Trey into the fold. It was very much you're crashing the party. You're crashing our Jimmy G party. And like we said, we don't need a new quarterback. Jimmy is fine. And then you have Jimmy, hey guys, thanks for having my back. There's a lot of having my back.
Yeah.
And then you fast forward to, the next season where all that weirdness happens. And I also felt like when Trey went down, I thought that the team, even though they were coming off a win, I thought that they were a little bit, maybe I'm being overly dramatic, I thought that they were a little too hyped for the situation. It was almost as if, finally that kid is gone. Let's get Jimmy back. That's how it felt. So I believe what Jimmy's saying. I don't know that he's being overly dramatic, but I do think that it was very clear that the team didn't want to move from Jimmy, and maybe it's more at fault for the Niners organization for making that awkward situation be a thing. But, it definitely felt like, my brothers had my back. Oh, yeah, we could definitely tell your brothers had your back.
Right. Did they have Trey Lance's back?
Absolutely not.
Is another question. And I'll get into my Trey Lance take here coming up.
I got you going now.
No, you did. And I'm going to play some Shanahan sound, which is going to drive my point home even more so. To the phones in a moment, but first from the 925, Jimmy G is over dramatic. And Dibs, me, is over reductive. I don't think he said the stuff about $25 million. No, Jimmy G never said anything about $25 million. That is me being overly reductive in boiling down the Jimmy Garoppolo saga to dollars. I do that a lot, and my partner Mark Willard takes offense at that. But for me, if you give me $25 million, and I know that these guys all make a lot of money, and we make a lot, but we spend a lot, but that to me would definitely color the way I would go about, handling myself in these situations. 888-957-9570. James is in Palo Alto. What's going on, James? You're on 95.7.
Hi, guys. Thanks for taking my call. I think a lot of what you've talked about has something to do with the enterprise itself. I think that Shanahan is not Bill Walsh. And Bill Walsh, remember, he traded away people like Joe Montana, or he cut Roger Craig. He got people to move on, and no one was more important than the team. And I think what Shanahan has unfortunately done is raise the cult of the person and not of the team. Like, for instance, who drafted Trey? Who was that decision maker? Who is that person being held accountable for the problems that Trey has? I mean, Trey is, 2 years younger than Brock Purdy. He's got 2 years less experience on the football field in college and pros. And Purdy was yanked as a senior because he was a failure at Iowa State. I mean, it's ridiculous. But what is the accountability of the enterprise, of the coaches, of the owners when they let this situation go crazy? I know Bill Walsh was a genius at offense, but he was a genius at managing people. And Kyle Shanahan is a failure.
Well, I don't know if you can make that leap, James. You just did, and I appreciate the phone call. But the reason to me, Alan, why Kyle Shanahan is not being held accountable at the level that he would otherwise is because they were 13-4 last year.
Right.
And they went to the NFC Championship game, and he did it with a guy that he drafted, Brock Purdy. You can say that he's lucky for drafting Brock Purdy, but I don't think that that's necessarily fair. You can't blame him for Trey Lance and then not give him credit for Brock Purdy.
Right.
If Brock Purdy wasn't any good and Trey got hurt and Jimmy got hurt and Brock Purdy came in, let's say Brock Purdy lost every game he started instead of winning every game, the amount of criticism on Kyle Shanahan would be 100-fold based on the fact that they didn't win. Brock Purdy came in and won. The offense got better. And because of all that, Kyle Shanahan's able to deflect and dodge criticism over the Trey Lance debacle.
Yeah, you get a mulligan now. You get a mulligan because of what ended up happening. I mean, what the Niners tried to do was exactly what, I wouldn't say exactly, but very similar to what the Warriors tried to do. Now, the Warriors had different important pieces, so they thought that they would be better suited to pull it off. But essentially, you had two Bay Area teams trying to pull off the two timeline situation. We know about the Warriors and their young bucks that they were hoping would pan out. They only have a couple of them now. They've moved off of two of them. And then you have the Niners, who it was two timelines. You have the Niners who are ready to go, and you go out and draft someone that needs the most work. He had the least amount of experience out of those top quarterbacks. So none of it did make sense. And I do think that Kyle Shanahan should, take that on the chin. But the thing is, now you got Brock Purdy, so that all goes away. The main point is you have Brock Purdy, but we're still not completely sure what Brock Purdy is. So you're not out of the woods yet. So I think that the whole piece about Shanahan and this cult culture, if you will, about the quarterback versus the team, that happens. That I feel like that happens with any team that doesn't have a straight up franchise QB. That happens with every team besides the Minnesota Vikings, because I feel like Kirk Cousins has been able to avoid that. We're talking about the Raiders. Their guy who's in New Orleans now. You think the Jimmy Garoppolo saga going back and forth with Jimmy was a thing? At least the Niners went to the Super Bowl and had great success. Raiders and Derek Carr back and forth?
Yeah.
Same idea. There was the Derek Carr cult, the Derek Carr stance, and then there was the team, the fans that wanted to move off of Derek Carr. So you have both sides of it, and it always comes up when you have a team that does not have a franchise QB. That's what it turns into. So you just want to pick. So fans just want to decide, hey, you know what? That's my franchise QB.
Right. And the Niners got bailed out because their franchise QB turns out probably won't be, and yet they drafted a guy last in the draft, and he might be that guy.